So I don't actually think buyers are liars. I think what happens is that it's a learning process, you know, and a lot of times it has to do with the market inventory. Maybe there's just not enough inventory, but even though it's very stressful to go out and do this and you're putting up a lot of time, you're learning so much as you go. And that's kind of what happened with us. We looked at, what, 20, 30 properties, something like that?
Yeah,
So
I don't
probably
know.
at least.
At least 20 or 30. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's hard to remember it at this point, but we looked at properties for like 3 years.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of properties in there.
And I just think like being able to, if you go out and you buy the first house you see, you know, you don't really have any comparison, you don't really have any grounding to where the value is, the real value, you know, at least to you. And I think what kind of builds over time is that you realize like everything is just about hitting dates and lining up interests, and amazing things happen all the time. And I think people expect that they're gonna have this HGTV moment where, you know, the heavens part and everything, and it's like, that stuff isn't exactly how it works. Right. It's more like, you know, you hurry up and wait, you're constantly under this, oh, we gotta do it right now, but then nothing happens on the other end, and you're like, what's taking so long, you have to rush. And it's like there's this whole, it's almost like the world opens up to you when you start to search for something. And as you start to work your way through it, yeah, you're gonna have those problems, but those problems were put there to help you get to where you're actually trying to go. Because you might be looking for the wrong thing, and you might not be able to articulate it. So we have our systems, but at the end of the day, you gotta kind of be okay with losing stuff, because it's just like in your case, it was better to lose that property than it would have ever been to go forward.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then
absolutely.
the opportunity that came from it was phenomenal.
Absolutely, it was my lack of education that made me want that property in the first place. And then it was my acquiring an education that makes me very thankful that I did lose that property. I did lose that deal. You know, that was fine. I didn't lose that deal. I gained not having
We passed
that property.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pass on it.
Right.
Which was, I think, wise with what came up. You know, before that, it didn't look like it was impossible. There was definitely some issues, but compared to a lot of stuff we looked at, it didn't look terrible. And you were starting to move into the income property side, and it was kind of in the middle, and it was definitely in limbo. And so I think the other side of it is that you had a lot of experience with this too, is that going in to buy the banks, the bank homes are a lot different. And I think people come into those with expectations that it's going to be like buying, you know, any other thing. It's like, no.
It is. I mean, I ended up purchasing the property that I have now from the owner, an actual person, the actual orthodontist who owned it.
My orthodontist.
His orthodontist, yeah.
Oddly enough.
And it was so much easier dealing with him than any of the bank-owned properties that I made offers on, or the bank-owned property that I was under contract with. It was just so much more frustration dealing with the banks than it was dealing with a real live person. But you know, still, I mean, there's a lot of great properties that are there that are bank-owned at this point, and they could definitely, you know, be capitalized on.
Well, I think it's that, yeah, you gotta get a little dirty to save money. That's just the way it is. And whether it's getting physically dirty, having to fix stuff, or just having to deal with the mucky muck to get through it, and the formalities and the banks. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's a guy on a computer in California, and then his direct line that approves something, and then we're negotiating between another realtor and ourselves. And then in your case, we have the contractors for the rehab, and it's really our job to bring it all together and hold it together, because other than that, unless you've already done this or you know what you're doing, this can just be a lot, and you know, you don't want it to be your full-time job, you just want to get there. I feel like that's the key, is that it's not about having to know all this stuff, it's just the more you understand, the less you're probably going to scare yourself and freak yourself out or make an emotional decision that doesn't make any sense. You know, and I just see that day in, day out. It's that people make decisions because they want to show off, or because they think they have to prove something, when it's really not in their interest. And I actually did, this is why we have such a good retention rate, is because I actually disclose this, and it shocks people. Because other realtors would be, you know, not so happy to say something that, you know, maybe needs to be said. And I feel like, again, we gotta be honest, and I have people go, you know, I know this is a bad idea, but I'm gonna do it anyways. And they do it with a smile, because I'm not judging you, I'm just telling you, hey, here's your options, you can pick from any of them, and most people, what that option is gonna be is they just want a nice house. They want to be simple, and they think that that's the way to get where they wanna go.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many sellers I talked to that they tried that and didn't work out for them too. So I think that everybody's gonna be different, and it's really just about being with a team that can get you the best of whatever you're looking for in whatever opportunity we got, and knowing when to say no. I mean, we never pressure. I mean, was there at any point that I even pressured you to do anything?
No. No, absolutely not.
My father kind of instilled that in me, but a lot of realtors are like, yeah.
Yeah. No, he was the first agent I ever worked with, and I was really expecting, the car salesman to show up. I was, and then, we walked into the first house and he goes, oh, well, this doesn't look good, and that doesn't look good, and this, and it kind of smells like mold, doesn't it? And I'm just like, are you supposed to be telling me this stuff? I thought you were trying to push a sale here.
Well, that's where people get confused, is that the listing agent, they're gonna lie to you, tell you whatever they needed to do to get something, because they might be being recorded by the seller. So it's in their interest to do it, because they can actually get fired by not doing it. So I don't necessarily blame them. I just, I wouldn't show up to a lawsuit, unless I've done it before, representing myself and, running my mouth about anything, just like when you're under police custody, everything you say, well, you're in the gauntlet. And a lot of it comes down to being able to, having had some contracting experience, I do, but there's always more. There's always stuff you can't see. There's always stuff behind the wall. What's behind here? I have no idea.
Duck feathers?
Yeah. So, and I think that role part is interesting, because if you don't have a relationship with a realtor, because this isn't a single transaction for us. I know Chris has now been more inspired and wants to kind of go in and get his license, which we definitely encourage, and there's always room to grow, and there's always more. But for a lot of people, it's not going to be their full-time job, and they just need to know they have someone they can always talk to about this stuff, especially someone who likes talking about it. I grew up in this, so this is all I've ever talked about, so this and music. So, and I feel like if anything, it's one of the great connectors in life, is that we all are connected by these things that we call, where we live, and the communities, and it's about building that. I mean, it's not just about selling a bunch of stuff. And in real estate, it used to be buyer beware. I know with condos, I've seen a ton of that, where people turn multifamilies into condos, and it's just kind of like a terrible financial innovation, which maybe in some cases works really well. I think in more densely populated cities, it's kind of a must. But for at least in our local market, it just seems really dumb. And you know how you can tell if something's dumb? I don't know if anybody ever tried to finance a Tesla, but the banks wouldn't loan on Tesla when they first came out. They would not loan on it, and that's always a good indicator. And with condos, there are times of 10-year cycles that for 4 of those years, the banks will not even touch condos. And it all comes down to,
I know that,
well, it's very risky for them to do so.
Yeah, I would probably not buy a condo just because the lifestyle never appealed to me so much. But yeah, I really had no idea that they were considered such a terrible investment. I didn't know.
It's it depends too.
It kind of makes sense though, because they're not. I mean, what's the appeal? I guess if you want like just a slightly simpler lifestyle.
Well, for a retirement thing, I totally understand why people might do that. But at the same time, you could buy a multifamily, have all the other tenants paying for it, and then hire somebody to take care of it for you.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, you can do it yourself. It's just they're flipping it around on you, and I feel like that's the same with like a reverse mortgage. Like you could just buy a multifamily, and that would basically be a reverse mortgage without any penalty.
Absolutely. And then and then you can pass it on when you pass away. You don't just
just give it to the bank,
to the scam artists.
Well, I don't know if it's a scam entirely, but I think that some people have used it, and if maybe you're going to use it and invest in different things, but it's inherently risky.
Right. I obviously haven't looked into reverse mortgages so much, but I know that there is a lot of criticism.
Yeah.
That maybe they are an option when you don't have any others, but maybe you should consider some other ones first.
Yeah.
Is really, I guess, the gist that I got of them.
It's funny today because it seems like everything moves so fast, it's really hard to keep track of everything, but that's why I really like this business, is it hasn't fundamentally changed much in its entire time, except for that it's gotten more professional and more upfront and more standardized. Even 10, 15 years ago, data from state to state wasn't even standardized. I mean, you couldn't even compare them. So it's only just starting to really get where you're trading apples with apples, and you can do that across the whole country. But that's what's interesting about how I learned to do investing was that you're supposed to diversify a little bit, because say you have one market that crashes. So how many different markets? So how many is too many? How many is too little?
Mm-hmm.
And the general rule of thumb is 3. So if you get to 3, then you can start to do more as you feel comfortable. But if you have 3, it's very unlikely. So if you had some properties outside of Portland, you had some properties over in Manchester, and you had some over on the seacoast, you're gonna have totally different price points, you're gonna have totally different markets, and the chance of all of those crashing at the same time is highly unlikely. You can diversify that further by going nationwide and having a couple different spots further apart, but even on a local market scale, it's...
And then at that point, you're adding risk to the management
Well, it's also just a hassle.
of it.
How far do you want to travel? How far do you want to deal with those things?
Do you
How many
wanna
different
have to-
vendors?
I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't want to have to show up to court in Albuquerque next week.
Right.
But
Who shows the support for themselves anyway?
Right. Yeah, not me.
Send your agent. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, a lot of that stuff is to be considered, and I know some of the most successful guys, and this doesn't always work because where you live might not be a great place to do it, but I know a guy in Nashua who he owned a demolition place and a rehab place, and he owns all the buildings on the street around him. So when he has to go check out his buildings, it's literally next to his house, his work, and all the... But some people want they want to be anonymous. They don't want people to know, and there are ways we can help you with all that. But a lot of times, people don't mind, and it's not a problem. So,
Right.
I think you just got to figure out what might work for you, and a little research and comparable research. And that's what we've really been working on when you came to kind of bring your passion for it, because all the stuff we're doing is benefiting us. We're going to learn a lot, and we're going to be able to make better. But we just figured, since it's not really available, we wanted to share it with everybody. And I think as we get more people excited about it, it's also that we're going to have more cross-checking of the research, and it'll get more interesting.
Absolutely.
Because I think that there's definitely a want and a need for all this. And even when we go to the investor meetings, they don't have it. They're not even touching it. They don't even talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's funny with the investor stuff too, because the RIA meetings and stuff, I just keep using that generic one. There's a bunch of investor meetings. You have to know that some of those people are just trying to offload properties, and you start to get to know the different types of investors. You start to get that some people have been doing it, and a lot of times it's just older guys that have been waiting or just dumping property because they're just tired of it, or even the thought of it, and because it does take up a little bit of your mind space.
Which are definitely, that's a good time to get to know someone.
Right.
If they're just
At a certain
unloading
point.
properties because they're tired of it.
Well, that's what I mean. There's always opportunity.
That's why I got such a good deal on my building.
You just wanted to roll.
Yeah, he was sick of owning it.
He was done
For years, he was thinking maybe he'd want to do something with it, so he held on to it for a while, never did anything with it, and then said, I just don't want to own it anymore. He didn't really care about getting what it was worth or anything like that. He just trying to get something for it.
Well, and that's the added benefit of always paying attention, always being aware, because I know when I bought my deal, we had been looking for 2 years, nonstop, day in, day out. My wife was an appraiser and me, and when we saw this property, it was like we bought it within I think 4 hours of seeing it,
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was but we just knew it was it. And it was just such an obvious value and such an obvious opportunity, despite its shortcomings. It was just overwhelmingly, ridiculously different than anything I'd ever seen on the market in 2 years. Still nothing to this day. So that was like a 1 in 10 year sort of deal for yours as well. Probably a 1 in 10 year deal. and it was just about having everything in line so that we could actually pull it off. Because it's easy to be able to spot opportunity when you get used to it, but to actually pull it together and do it well is an art in a way. It's also a test of your will to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Especially with the banquets, they're not the most fun, and I think it was a lot more of a pleasure working with someone who was genuinely benefiting and genuinely involved in the prosperity, opposed to just an anonymous bank who doesn't even know which derivative they're holding or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother scam. But the real thing is just to get an idea, because this is overwhelming. There's a lot to it, but again, it's relatively finite, and there are some technical innovations that change with the mortgages and stuff, and the regulations and the towns and all that, and the different jurisdictions. But for the most part, it's still just a structure with certain needs, and it's a lot more finite than I would say businesses.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And that's where you can really fill the gaps in your knowledge by building a team around you. Take all that intimidation out of it.
Oh yeah.
By just building that solid team around you. That team that we feel like here we've already built.
Well, a lot of the reasons, so we're the Live Realty team, but we're at Keller Williams. And the reason we work with Keller Williams, so we've owned brokerages. My mom is a broker. We could do it all ourselves. But the benefit I get is that I'm legally protected by one of my favorite landlords in the whole state, who's Nate Dickey. And his experience has just been priceless. Every issue I've ever had, and that's why you have a team. That's why we pay. We pay to have his experience and his opinion. It's just never done me wrong. It's always been fantastically available, and just like I said, learn from other people's wisdom. Any idiot can learn from the hard lessons of life. It's all about And I think that's one thing that people forget, and when they go to rent and stuff like that with the apartments, we can help you rent the property.
Thanks for watching the Live Free podcast. Remember to follow our blog for all of the latest up-to-date information on the real estate market.
LiveFreeRealty.com, keeping you ahead of the crowd.